and I've actually been getting a lot of requests to do a tutorial video of one of my drawings, so I decided to do this one for which I call Kirby Bogard, the Kirby copy ability from Smash Brothers. And this one starts off actually very easy. I started doing a simple sketch with a ballpoint pen on a pink sticky note. I just wanted to do a very quick sketch, and I decided to just do it in black and white, just very simple. And then I transferred this onto Procreate. I just simply took a picture of it and laid it on on a separate layer. And as for step number one, what I like to do is make some solid colored shapes so that I know what the shadow colors will be as the second step. And I just simply started with his body, solid pink, and his little nub gloves, his red shoes, his red hat, and the typing of the Fatal Fury text on there. And as I'm going, I tend to size as I go if it needs to be refined just a bit from the very, I guess, rough sketch. And the way I do that is with the calligraphy brush pen, the monoline, which makes it very simple to create solid shapes and then just fill it in as I go. Next, I took a little time to make sure the Fatal Fury logo on his hat was very well lined up and made, so that it makes it easier for me to edit that when adding highlights and shadows towards the end. And as the second step, I like to go in and start to refine start to clean up some of the edges. For example, I'm cleaning up his eyes at certain points. For this next step, I create a new layer, and this is where I'm going to start creating some shadows underneath, for example, the hat. Start adding textures into his hair, right underneath the left arm, under his body area with a darker color. And because the light is coming in from the right, I chose somewhat of a warm pink color as a middle ground color. And what I do like to make sure is that alpha lock is on the layers for the solid color, so that it's easy for me to add shadows without getting out of the line, so there's no erasing involved out of those boundaries. And the bulk of the time that's spent is going to be with the blending and detailing, which is where I start to choose different shades of the base color so that I'm adding shadows and then highlights, and then using the smudge tool to make sure there's even blending where it needs to be. And what I'm also doing is making sure there are some middle and highlights towards the right side of the body where the flame is coming from, and that's where I'm using some very warm yellows and orange colors, and also some highlights in the eyes to show that reflection. And this is where I also start adding some texture in the gloves, which is found in the touch-ups panel, and that's where I use the old skin texture brush for his gloves. And I actually used a little bit of the flowing hair and short hair for Kirby's blonde hair bangs and his ponytail as well. And as far as the power geyser flame, that's where I just used a lot of different brushes that I experimented with. For example, I used many different ones from the organic section, like the sable brush, the hemp brush, and I also even used some of the elements. For example, the main one I used was the flames brush setting to see which look that I liked. And in the same way, I also used the alpha lock on those layers, which made it easier for me to keep from erasing. And I further on refined the edges of those flames to make sure they were pointed and not so rounded looking. And to finish off this video with the last minute or so is just further smaller details that I go in. For example, in the hat, I start adding some small stitching with a somewhat pink white color, making sure that I had some highlights on the right side and shadows on the left, while I also continued to add some more texture in the hair and shoes and also some stitching on in his gloves. And one thing I forgot to mention was how I made the body shadow, which I simply merged the layers down and made a copy of it on a separate layer, and I used a Gaussian blur and I squished it down and inverted it right underneath, starting from his right shoe, and I kind of just angled it and warped it to the left just to give it that effect of the flame giving it a very, deep shadow. Alright, so thank you for watching, and if you do want to see the sped up shorter version of this video, it's already uploaded, so go ahead and check that out, and just stay tuned for another upcoming video. Thanks, bye.